Hi, how's it going, everyone? This is the third installment of Learning to Be a Sub. Today we're talking about negotiations and kind of how to get to there and what happens right after that. It's not too long, so that's why I'm kind of putting them all together. So obviously, before negotiations, you need to find a partner. Now, um, if there's quite a few DOMs out there. There are quite a few fake DOMs out there. It's very important to understand that. There are people who just say it, just I don't know why, but they have no clue what they're doing. Obviously, everyone has to start somewhere, but with a little bit of effort and research, someone who wants to do it, they can kind of get a general idea and start off. But like I remember when I was new, I did a lot of research, and the first time I met a sub, they were very experienced, and I completely disastered it, and we didn't even do anything because realistically, it's one thing to read it, but another thing to actually put it in practice. Jump quite a few years later, and obviously it's way different now. But so another thing to look out for is what's called a top. So a top is someone who only does play in the bedroom. Now, if that's what you're into, only bedroom, no relationship, but just play. You're not a sub. You're technically a bottom. That's the way I like to define it. I'm sure there's people who don't even know that exists, but it can save a lot of confusion and miscommunication. So top is someone who only does dominance in the bedroom, and a bottom is someone who only does submission in the bedroom, and then outside of that it's different, right? So it's not that. So this is to be a sub, so it has to do with both, okay? But I'm more so talking about the relationship. So yeah, that's kind of what this is about. So let's say you find a dom, okay? Great, good job. So next step is you kind of meet him. You see if there's any connection. You should be able to tell pretty quickly if there's any kind of connection at all. But some take longer than others, but generally it doesn't take very long. I know for me, I'll know if I like the person within not very long of meeting them, okay? After that, negotiations is done. So the Dom should probably be the one presenting it. You'll find that that's what will happen most of the time. If they don't and you want to do it, you can always bring it up. It's not a big deal. Yeah, so that's kind of the next step. So negotiations is very simple. It's where kind of your limits are placed as a sub, and also what rules and protocols the Dom's going to put in place, and you kind of talk about everything to make sure it all works for both of you, or if there's more, all of you. So yeah, so rules are very simple, you know. For example, no lying, you know, don't cheat, things like that, right? Very hard stuck rules, right? And protocols are a little bit different. They run under the same idea, but they are a bit different. A good protocol would be, for example, when I'm with a sub, if there's a door, it's my job to open it. So I'll open all the doors. They're not allowed to, unless, of course, we're not together at the moment. Then they open their own doors or whatnot. But yeah, if we're together, I open all the doors, right? So that would be a protocol that I would put into effect. That I've kind of always, not always, but for the most part, I've done that. Then limits are very important for like DOMs will have limits too, but generally because they're the ones making the decisions within the limits, if they don't want to do something, they just won't do it, right? So, yeah, it's a little bit different, but they might have something like if you have something that you do, they that they don't like, they might make it a limit to not do it. For example, I don't like being scratched. So like I've had subs who really like to scratch, but you know, it's not something generally you'll talk about, but if it happens, then I'll put a limit on it because I don't like it, right? But yeah, limits are very important for a sub because you need those to explain what's not okay, right? We live in 2019 right now when I'm recording this video. It's not the 1500s. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do, and that's why limits are put in place, right? So if you're new, right, which I'm assuming quite a few of you guys are, that's completely fine, but you need to learn your limits, okay? Now, there's soft limits and hard limits. A soft limit is something that you're okay with, but just not right now, okay? So, it can be a variety of different things. It can just put a limit on it just because you're new to the relationship, or want to get more comfortable first, okay? Now, a hard limit is something where you just do not like at all and will not do it. And yeah, so it's very important to do that. And as the whole idea is as long as the DOM doesn't break any limits, everything should be okay, right? Now, negotiations, they're not hard stuck, right? If something comes up and it needs to be added or changed, or your desires change, you can change the negotiations. It can be as many times as you want, how often that you guys want. It could be every day, every week, every month, once a year, whatever it needs to be. What I always suggest is when something's new, you do it more often, and then as you guys have been together for longer, the negotiations will kind of be like once a month. I like to always suggest structuring it so specific day or like time of the month you'll have negotiations, and you'll go through everything again and just make sure everything's okay. And because limits and desires change all the time, right? It could go one moment you like something, one couple months later you don't like it, then you like it again later, right? It happens, people change. So that's it's always good to communicate that, and having it where it's all discussed in a structured area. It makes it very easy to be able to discuss those things. So if you're new, you find a DOM who has some experience, they should be able to help you find limits, right? Talk about that. Now, I always like to suggest, if you just met a DOM, to also do your outside research, because then just to make sure that you're learning the correct information, because no one's perfect, and it's not like a perfect system, so to speak, right? So yeah, but you can get really good ideas from just some Google searches. So yeah, so it basically, once the negotiations are done, you know what kind of relationship you're having, the limits are laid out, rules and protocols to start, whether it's verbal negotiations, are more for if it's like a newer relationship and it's not going to be like a long lasting one, or if they're very experienced, because they'll have everything and they'll know about it, and it'll be quick and easy because you both know about the limits and everything and all the rules and stuff, and it's very easy to pick up on if you've been doing it a while. But if you're new and it's going for like a longer relationship, or that's the idea, you can write it down. I've done both. I've done verbal negotiations. I've done paper, like contracts, for example. And you know, I like having it written down a little bit more because it's easier to remember, right? My memory's not perfect, but it's not terrible, but it's not the best either. But yeah, so having you pick which one you want to do, and then once negotiations are done, that's when you give your submission to the Dom, right? So it's kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3, and then yeah, that's kind of where everything jumps into action, right? That's where you guys start. I know a normal relationship, you meet, you like someone or whatever, and then you ask them out a couple dates, and then you ask them to be a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatnot there. But this is more structured, so it can seem a little bit fast, right? But if you want it to be slow, you mentioned that in negotiations. It's not something where, like the way I view it is after negotiations is done and you agree on it, you're like the next words, not the next words, but kind of the very next step is giving your submission, or if you want to do that, right? So if you like the person and you like the idea of the relationship, right? That's the next step, right? So if there's any issues, you bring it into negotiations. If you're just unsure if you want to do it, it's not really fair to the other person, and they can give you time, but I've from my experience, if I do negotiations with somebody and then they're unsure if they want to actually do it, I would say I don't even know if one has actually gone through with it, because it's kind of something like you dip your toes in the ocean and it feels really cold. So negotiations is kind of tedious. It can be kind of tedious. It can be fun, but it's not always, right? It's kind of just a necessity that needs to be done for good communication. So if you just go off of that and then think about it, that's all you're going to have, something to think about, and you're not going to want to do it. So I don't even know if I've ever had it where a sub, and it's only happened when they've been new as well, but do negotiations, then they want to think about it before doing or giving submission. I don't think I've had one where it's actually worked right after that. So I think it's just kind of a waste of time for both of you, in my opinion. But yeah, so once submission's given, it's after that you kind of jump into everything. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going to cut it off. If you have any questions or like the video, do leave a like, leave a comment. As I've said in other ones, I get a notification on my phone, so if you do leave a comment, I'll be able to see it right away. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. Bye-bye.